unlike a macro dose, or we'll say like a fully beyond the threshold, beyond the veil dose of psychedelics, wherein you usually, lots of people use psychedelics differently, but a sort of general sort of safety guideline is, well, you don't take anything in particular for some period of time beforehand. You have your main experience, and then you don't repeat that necessarily for some time afterwards. The arc of the benefit of it is the singular experience, or the one experience. Where with microdosing, you're referring to something that you're doing somewhat repeatedly with spaces in between, and the benefit comes out sometime later, maybe in the acute day, but the real benefits don't kind of come through until you've been doing them for a little while. What does the sort of dosing protocol look like for microdosing? What days of the week? How many days in between? Does that differ between LSD or psilocybin? Are there different variations of it? What are the known microdosing protocols?
Okay, we're going to be obviously brief because the book has it in detail for the obvious reasons that people should understand what they're doing with their own bodies.
Of course.
Microdosing protocols all include days off. And in the larger scope, when one is microdosing, say, for a month or 6 weeks, every protocol includes weeks off. Now, again, if we're going to stop thinking of pharmaceuticals and we're thinking in other ways. The reason that very early on in my explorations, giving it to very experienced psychonauts, and I'd say, well, what happened? They say, well, it felt good. Usually you'd get a little more than that, but that was enough. And then the second day, they would say, hey, I still feel good. Okay. Now, that's called the second day effect. In high doses, it's called the afterglow, and it lasts 4 to 6 weeks with a high dose. So what we were immediately aware of is taking it every day was wasting it and not necessary. And so the protocols that exist, the one that's most used is called the Fadiman protocol. And it's 1 day on and 2 days off, 1 day on, 2 days off, and for a number of weeks, depending on what you're taking it for. There's another very popular protocol developed by Paul Stamets, which is called the Stamets protocol. And that's taking it for 4 days on and 3 days off. There's another protocol, which is the easiest one to remember, which is every other day. And then there's people who say, well, I don't need any protocols. I just do it with intuition. I'm not convinced that intuition is as good as noticing what you're doing, but those are the major groups. And those are equally true for psilocybin or LSD. There is something called tolerance. And you were mentioning it kind of indirectly by the problem with high dosing very often is it doesn't work. That if you take a high dose on Monday and God speaks to you and all your traumas are resolved, you say, wow, I want to go back to that. So Wednesday you do it again, and you have maybe a quarter of the same powerful effect. And then you say, well, I just need more. So on Thursday you take double what you took in the first place, and you get no effect at all. So it has a whole different kind of pharmacology, and the mind, in some sense, says, if you've taken a high dose, we're turning off the receptors because you have to integrate in some way, even physiologically, what you've done. It isn't that you have, it isn't like marijuana, which accumulates in the body. It doesn't at all. So the reason that microdosing is done infrequently is that seems to be enough.
So I have two analogies for you. One was given to me by someone on Clubhouse. They said, imagine taking 100 micrograms once in a month or dividing that into 10 slots of 10. Imagine the same amount of information comes into your system either way. Under which circumstances are you likely to be able to use more of it and remember more of it and really be aware of it and take good use? And the answer, obviously, is by dividing it up. You're just going to forget a good deal on the big dose. The other analogy is a potter's wheel that you kind of kick with your foot and you get it going for a while, but then you don't have to do that. It spins for a while and then you come back to it. So given what we think is happening with microdosing in terms of neuroplasticity and anti-inflammatory effects and bringing people back to equilibrium, when you take just a microdose and then you take it again in a few days, you begin to tune into how to use it, and you begin to get some momentum on neurological and physiological levels. I personally think that the Fadiman protocol is a lot more conservative and therefore better for beginners than Stamets. On the Stamets protocol, you have 19 doses in a 31-day month. On the Fadiman protocol, it's 11 doses. And what we found out is that a lot of times the second day really is the best. And we even have research that we talk about in the book that people definitely sleep best on the second day. And it's an unusual large spike in high quality sleep. So I really like the idea of people slowing down and giving themselves time to make use of their neuroplasticity and feeling better and maybe being in a different self and a different part of who they are. And, again, less is enough. We're not in a rush here with microdosing.
And the other piece, which is more unusual, is why you're taking a couple of weeks off. This came up, I certainly had nothing to do with this. This came up independently from people around the world that seemed like a good idea. Again, we're looking at real world evidence. And what people basically found is if they were taking it for a specific condition, often they said, oh, I no longer have this condition. I'm no longer microdosing. Also, when they return, if they return to microdosing for a different condition or even the same one returning, they were better able to dose themselves correctly. Remember, this is something where you, the individual, have to come up with what works best for you, not what an external source says is right. It's pretty much the way you eat food.
I'm gonna pause. I'm hearing a beeping.
That's it, Jim. Jim's going to do something. I don't know. He did something.
I just thought I turned everything off.
No.
Delay everything. Okay.
It's amazing how the tiny little beep cuts right through the microphone and becomes the big object in the foreground.
Yeah, my middle ear muscles relaxed or tightened up, and I could no longer hear the meaning in the being conveyed through certain frequency patterns.
I'm with you on that.
Can you, sorry, Jim, can you go back and just repeat what you were saying about, people just kind of realize like, oh, the thing that I was microdosing for seems resolved. And so I stopped microdosing. Can you finish your sort of last part of that thought there?
Well, let's give it a real example, which we have literally hundreds of examples of depression. And the people who microdose are what are called treatment-resistant depression, which is if other things have worked for you, you don't show up. Mm-hmm. But people who've had SSRIs for 5, 10, 15 years with no effect or no benefits show up. And what they say is, oh, after I have microdosed for a certain amount of time, I'm not depressed. Meaning they're not less depressed. Their report is, I'm not depressed. It feels the way I did before I was depressed. So we consider that pretty exciting. So they also then take a few weeks off. And they break into two groups. Some people say, I'm done. It's kind of when you had a cut on your hand, it heals. You don't keep re-cutting it and re-healing it. But other things, say arthritis, may be long-term. So at the end of a couple of weeks off, where your body has taken on as much healing as it could from the help of the microdose, some people say some of my symptoms are returning. I will do another round of microdosing. Other people say, I'm done. So again, this is very hard on conventional science, but it's very easy about talking about real people.
Now you made you dropped a little breadcrumb there with respect to using microdosing for arthritis, and I won't get you to talk about it, but it is in your book, kind of like leave a little something exciting for people to talk or to read into it later.
Actually, arthritis isn't in the book, but pain is.
Pain, so that's right. Pain is in the book. Yeah.
There's a huge section on pain.
Yeah, actually, little side note is the episode that I'm in post-production to release on the Friday we're recording. This is going to come out sometime later. Friday from the date of right now recording. The next episode coming out is explicitly about psychedelics for chronic pain, but not microdosing explicitly. So let's just leave that for a second. What's that?
Not yet.
Not yet. So Is once enough? It sounds to me like the benefits of microdosing, apart from, and I'll ask you a little bit about this later, but just having a good day. I mean, it's great to have a good day, but the benefits of microdosing that you're speaking about, they're coming out not because someone microdosed on Monday and so their life is better. It's because they microdose for a period of time, and it's consistently over a period of time. Is that correct?
Well, let's again. Let me give you an image. You've been told that if you went to the gym and you did such and such exercises, that such and such muscle groups would improve. So you take a day off and you go to the gym from the time it opens till the time it closes. That's it. You've done 8 different rounds of all these exercises and you're done. And you tell people now you're going to have, and everyone looks at you like you don't quite understand the way the body works. It actually takes a while for tissues and systems and the brain to recalibrate at a higher level of effectiveness. So microdosing seems to keep nudging you the way going to the gym nudges you in the direction that you, first of all, the direction you intend, and then the general direction of improved health.